for your patience, Emily. Jump in.
Alright, would you guys all pray with me really quickly in the beginning? Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you so much for this amazing opportunity all of us seniors have had. Thank you that we've had 3 weeks to really dig into the passions and talents that you've given us and also help us reach out and find new talents. Lord, please speak through me so that I can speak clearly and convey just the amazing experience that I had to everyone here. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So I remember the first time I ever opened up a Jan Term catalog, and I was flipping through it, and I was really struck by the title, Building Bridges of Senior Jonas' Class. And I kind of just continued on. I was too terrified to even attempt that class, but I didn't really realize in the moment how big of an impact it would have on me. So it turns out that building bridges, the concept, has a lot of connection to community service. So I've spent the last 3 weeks spending a lot of time kind of digging into this symbol. So to me, a bridge, what is a bridge? I have defined it as something that can't be built overnight. It is something that takes a lot of hours of work, both beforehand and hours of hands-on physical labor. Also, it requires planning beforehand. It requires blueprints and zoning and all sorts of kinds of requirements you have to fill. Also, it requires supervisors. In the moment, you can't just kind of let people go. There has to be someone who knows what's going on, knows the plan, knows how it should be done with experience. Also, it's made up a lot of boring and kind of simple materials, such as little pieces of nails and little scraps of wood, but they all come together to build something beautiful. Also, it makes a connection from an old location to a new location. This is the main purpose of a bridge, is to help get from one place to a place that previously would have been impossible. And finally, if a bridge is maintained, if it's been built well, a lot of care and thought's been put into it, then it's going to last for future generations, not just for the people who built it and put in the time in the moment, but it's going to last and last and last. So, this has a connection to community service. So, when I was very young, I remember going to a beach, and all along, washed up over the beach, were thousands and thousands of shrimp. They were up on the shore just drying out and dying. And me, being my innocent little child, I took up my plastic shovel and I just started scooping one at a time and tossing them back into the ocean, one at a time. And I remember my parents were just kind of, they kind of nodded sympathetically and like, dear little girl, you're not going to make a difference because there's so many here. And also, the giant waves would just push them right back on as soon as I tossed them out into the ocean. But for me, I was so convicted in this that I was so sure that for at least one little shrimp, just giving it one more chance at surviving, that it was worth it. It was worth just getting that one little shrimp back into the ocean, even if they might just get washed back up. And I'd kind of forgotten this lesson a little bit as I grew up, that you don't have to save every single shrimp, but it doesn't mean that you can't just make an impact on that one shrimp that you're saving. So this is kind of something that I rediscovered through my project. So, me, I am not a very spontaneous person, so before I tried to dive into the community service project, I wanted to research it beforehand. So I did a lot of interviews, I did a lot of time at the library, I got to know one-on-one first name basis with all the librarians, so that was exciting. Also, I tried to get a really unique perspective of community service. There's been a lot of people who've been trying to address this problem of why is it that our youth aren't serving as much as they used to. So I tried to be creative. I did sports. What is it that parents do to get their children involved with a sports team? Because maybe sports is a lot like community service, it's a type of club. How do they motivate their children to be involved? This wasn't exceptionally helpful. Next, trauma-proofing your kids. This seems to be one of the problems that we have. Why kids aren't serving is because we're always kind of, redirected around the problem. So I was like, maybe if I see why parents are doing that, maybe we can change it so that they're not doing it. But this also is not exceptionally helpful. Next, if you can't tell by the picture with the man in white with his little butterfly, this is more of like a self-help book and full of lots of feel-good fluff, but also not helpful for my project, but I tried. Next, I made a vlog on YouTube. Yes, I am a little bit technological, and I had exactly 0 followers, and I was just using it to practice my Spanish. I was in independent study this year, so I just wanted more time practicing speaking. And all of a sudden, some big, apparently, YouTube channel from Uruguay picked it up and put it in a montage, and all of a sudden I had all these friend requests and all these comments, and I just spewed on one of my blogs about my project, just talking about it, it's a theme, and I was just practicing. practicing, and all these students started sending me messages about, oh, hey, I'm a student in Uruguay, and here's what we do, and oh, here's what I think the problem is, and here's what I love about my country. And it was kind of a God thing. I wasn't expecting this at all, and so now I have a bunch of followers, and they keep sending me messages, and it's really exciting. So I got that. So what did I do in Uruguay? Well, my name is Emily McBride, and I went on a 3-week exchange program to Uruguay to study community service. So the first week I was at Colegio Seminario, which is the high school that comes up here every January for our Jan term class. And I went and I attended classes and I lived with the students that had been living with me in the past. The second week I went to Ort University with another student from the previous year building bridges. And the third year I spent being a tourist with my mom in the city and in Punta del Este, kind of getting that perspective of the city. So the main reason that I went was for this program called Castores, and it's essentially a community service club connected with Colegio Seminario. And every single Saturday, these kids go out and they serve in their community. It's basically a 3-year phase. The first year that you are in Castores is the construction phase, where every single group that's in the Castores program will go out and they'll build things like houses, parishes, things like that. It's very manual labor, very, very hands-on, nitty-gritty kind of dirty work. The second year is children. It's all about sharing the joy of the Lord, and it's about just really making a safe place for these inner city kids to go and just have fun. And it's just really joyful. It's pretty lighthearted. It's about making games and face painting and dressing up and just making a joyful place for these kids. And the third year is where it gets pretty serious. This is where the children go and they serve the people that are homeless, the people that are disabled, the people that are abandoned, the people that are dirty, the people that are discarded. It's really, really hard. It's the outcast. So you've kind of progressed from minimal contact to like really serious contact. And I had the opportunity to go and serve at a place called Cotolengo Masculino, which is essentially an insane asylum for kind of the poorest of society, all these men that their families can't afford to take care of them. And I was warned numerous times by the students at Colegio Seminario that this is a really, really hard thing. You might not want to do this. You might want to reconsider. I don't think you'll like this. So I was a little bit worried going into it. I prayed a lot about it, like, Lord, please give me eyes to see these children the way you do. And it was kind of an interesting God moment for me, because on the way, when I've been flying in, I've been reading this book, Kisses from Katie, which you guys should all read if you haven't. But there's a passage in there where Katie's talking about how she's in Africa and all these little kids are running up to her, and she talks about just like kissing their little heads that are covered in fungus and like nuzzling their cheeks that are covered with dirt and snot, and she didn't even notice those parts of them because she was just so in love with these little image bearers that she was seeing. And when I read it, I remember I was kind of sick to my stomach. I was like, that is so beautiful, but I don't think that's something I could ever do. I don't think I could overcome that sort of visceral response, that physical response to this sort of dirtiness and brokenness just to love on the kids. So God worked in me. He kind of proved me wrong. So I went to Cotolengo Masculino, and I was praying the entire time. I was really worried. You pull up and it's all gated in. There's passwords and there's layers of security. And we just kind of swarmed it. All of our group, we just kind of marched in. And I can tell you that this was the best part of my entire trip. It was really hard. There were children in the corner rocking back and forth. There were people hitting their heads against the wall. There were kids screaming and running around without shoes on, and it was really dirty. And it was really, really hard. But it took me about 5 seconds to just completely look away from that and start falling in love with these people one by one, as children would run up and hang on me and laugh and giggle and run around and be like all shy and giggle and turn around. And I just fell madly in love with every single person in this place. And they would come up. There's a tradition in Uruguay where people come up and they kiss you. And a lot of these kids, they're a little bit drooly and things like that. So I was a little bit worried at first beforehand, but I can tell you that every single drooly, my mom's crying, sloppy kiss I treasure, and I remember every single one. So I want to just introduce a couple of these, my new friends to you. The boy in the green right there, he's the one who taught me how to salsa dance. I'm an awful dancer, and he thought it was hilarious, but he dragged me up on stage and he taught me choreography. The boy in the red hat, his name is Andres. I remember him, he was very, very concerned that I thought he was ugly because he was in a wheelchair. So I spent a lot of time convincing him, like, no, actually in America, boys with wheels, they're like top of the food chain. So we had some great bonding time there. Next, the man on the right with the black hat, his name is Martin. He gave me the whole history of this traditional drink called mate, which everyone drinks, but he told me all the way from the Gaucho Cowboys in the very beginning, all the way to modern day, all like the taste testing. I felt like I was at like a wine screening, like all these little details, I had no idea. But and he'd like keep asking, like, do you remember what I just told you? And so I learned a lot of history from him. He also acted kind of like the annoying big brother of this little boy kneeling down here. His name is Charlie. He'd always come up to Charlie and he'd like wink at me. I'm like, uh-oh, what's he gonna do? And he'd like give Charlie a little wet willy or like tickle him. So it was really funny just to see their interactions with each other, so normal. And then Charlie, him and I kind of became the best of friends. I first met him when we were dancing. I asked him, he was kind of standing off on the side. I was just like, hey, what's your name? Would you like to dance with me? And he couldn't speak, but he just got so shy and so embarrassed. He like blushed bright red and he'd like hide his face. It was the cutest thing ever. So he ended up like just leading me around. He showed me where all the animals were. We colored together, and I just made a really, really neat bond with him. The boy in the middle, he had been waiting right at the very entrance of the gate for when our group came in. He was so excited to meet us that he couldn't even wait inside. It was cold outside, and he had just rushed out there just to greet us all. And then the man on the left, he actually almost died when he was 18. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he ended up getting damage to his brain and also lost sight in his left eye. And he's this incredible artist. He has, you've seen a couple of them, he just has these canvases and he just pours out his soul on them. And he wanted me to be sure that I showed you all his artwork, not so that he could become famous for his artwork, but because he wants you guys to hear his story about how he survived and how he's still persevering, and now he's sharing his gift with the kids that are living in this home. So now you all have met him. The next thing I did for the Castores program is I went to an old person's home. This is for the women who, most of them have grown up on the streets, so there's also a lot of mental disabilities and things like that. And this is where I met my biggest difficulty, which, as you can imagine, language barrier was something I consistently struggle with. But a lot of these dear sweet women don't have teeth. So I learned to communicate very with like gestures and just like nodding sympathetically and complimenting them on little things that I knew. And it was really interesting to me learning how to communicate with love as opposed to with words. So that was a really neat realization that I had. Also, I realized that there's different types of service. Even though everyone, the entire group is serving at one location, there's a lot of little niches where people just kind of naturally fit in. So like on the left, I call these the Holly Ray servers, the people that just like put themselves out there and they're like the gung-ho social butterflies. Right now they're leading a dance class for these old ladies and they like told jokes in Spanish, which must have been pretty simple because even I understood them. And then on the right, there was people who went and they did the gift of service. They were making beds, they were folding laundry, things like that. And then they also had the people on the outskirts, like talking one-on-one with lady, which would be like the service of quality time. So I realized that even when you go to one organization, you're not limited to just one type of task, that there's something for everyone. The next thing I did is I went, and this group, they make a meal every single Saturday, they cook it themselves, and then they go out on the streets near the school and they look for homeless people. And there's kind of a unique law in Uruguay that if you're caught 3 times on the street, that you get sent to jail. So these people are very living in insecurity. They're always hiding, always on the move. And the thing that I remember most from this is that when they would find a homeless person hidden in a corner or back on a blanket, they would give them the meal. But then they were very intentional about going up and kissing them on the cheek. And what I learned is that even though these people are hungry and they're starving and they have physical needs, more importantly, they just want to feel included. And so this kiss, for them to say, I accept you, you're human, I see you, that's what these people really valued. Next, the reunion. As if an entire day of Saturday serving isn't enough, at the end of the day, when it's nighttime and dark and everyone's tired, they all meet up in their groups in this little building and they discuss the day for 2 hours. So for example, what you guys are hearing right now, this is just me, this is one person, my perspective. And so if you can imagine having an entire group sharing stories just like I've been doing, I feel like that's when you would see how big God is. Like in my life, I'm seeing it's like God is so big that I know that from my experiences, I couldn't capture them all. And when you have everyone's stories compounding upon each other, compounding, that's when God is like, holy smokes, look how big I am. So I think this is a brilliant idea, and I'm so impressed by these kids that they come and they do this. And also another reason the Castores program has the reunion is because they're very, very intentional about the Sabbath. Like, this is an entire day that we're devoting to God. We're not going to cut corners. We're not going to pull out our own time to do things that we need to do. This takes priority. So I thought that shows a lot where the values are. So I came up with a 5-step plan after my 3 weeks in Uruguay, trying to think of what is it that works. What is it that turns someone from not caring to caring? What is it that moves someone from being inactive to just being wholeheartedly in? So here is what I came up with. The first step is to notice an issue. If you don't notice, nothing else can begin. So you guys all know the slug bug game, right? So when you're driving around, when you're a little kid maybe, you don't really notice them. But as soon as you hear about the slug bug game where you can smack your neighbor, you are going to start searching out for these slug bugs. And you're going to start finding a lot more, right? Like when you're intentionally looking for these slug bugs, they're everywhere. So I kind of had the same experience with homelessness. So during my time there, I just started being intentional about looking for these things. I started looking for people, looking for faces that I'd seen before, seeing if they were still there. And I started seeing these people, recognizing them, smiling at them, saying hello, asking their names. But first you have to notice that they exist. I think a lot of times it's really easy, especially for Americans, this seems to be something we struggle with, is we like to close ourselves off. We like to just kind of be inward focused, kind of steel ourselves and just kind of go forward. This is what I need to do, focusing on myself, because we don't want to see all of the bad things. We don't want to be exposed to that. We don't want to open ourselves up to that because it's hard. It is emotionally draining to see all of the problems out there. But when we do that, not only do we kind of close ourselves off to this opportunity to feel empathy and humanity, but we also miss some things that are beautiful. So I kind of thought the beautiful illustration of this was when I was flying in with my airplane. There was this gorgeous, gorgeous sunset outside of my window, and I stared at it for probably a solid 3 minutes, just like, oh my goodness, check this out, this is so cool. And I was like leaning over my aisle friends there, just like staring out the window. And I realized that my 2 other friends over there had never even looked up to see out the window. The person over there has his headphones in, he's looking at his movie. I think it was 24, which I know is exciting, but come on, that's sunset. And then the other person's playing Sudoku. So that's when I realized that it is really easy to get kind of absorbed in ourselves, even when we're faced with these beautiful things. So step 2, what part tugs at your heart? This is something that I've learned a lot, and something that the Castores program highlights beautifully. By going through the 3 steps, construction, children, and then people who are kind of sad and outcasts, you have the opportunity to kind of find where you fit in. For example, Luke might fit in with construction. Like, this is where I feel that I'm called to, this is where I work the best, this is where I'm passionate. Inez, who was in the Building Bridges program this last year, she still talks about these kids that she worked with last year, and she still has them as her profile picture. She's always asking the group underneath, how is so-and-so, how are they doing, what projects did you do, here's an idea I came up with for your project. And then, like, for me, I love children with disabilities, and that's something I want to do in my future, so I found that I really, really connected with that part of service, but I found that because I was exposed to all of them. So wherever you find where you fit, that's when you're going to be most productive. That's where you get your energy. Instead of getting drained, you are the one who's energizing others. So it's important to find where you have your conviction. Step 3, get personal. Sometimes it's really hard, really easy to get lost in kind of the abstract, this is the problem and it's really big. But after you realize what it is that you connect with, you have to start putting faces to the problem. You have to realize that these people are more than their problems. They have names, they have faces, and every single person on this slide, I could tell you their name and at least 3 facts about them. Next, you have to have support. Sometimes when I was there in Uruguay, I was struggling with the language, I was struggling with just the brokenness and the dirtiness and everything I saw around me. And then I get a little Snapchat from one of my friends and I'm like, hey, how's it going? I'm praying for you, or a text message or a Facebook message. And that is the thing that keeps you going. Your initial passion can be the thing that starts you, but if you want to maintain that over a long period of time, you have to have support backing you up. This is a community endeavor, and you have to have your friends and your family and people praying for you. Next, you have to do reflection. This is what the reunion is capturing, and this is something that I've learned. I have learned that it is a skill that you have to cultivate in order to think deeply. That is not something that happens naturally. That's not something you can decide to do. That is something you have to train yourself to do. You have to force yourself to think about an issue, dig as deep as you possibly can, let it go, and then come back to it the next day, and then let it go, and then come back, and then you have to share it with your friends, talk about it, think about it some more, and that is something you have to work at, because it is exhausting to think hard about issues, but it is also necessary. So, what did I learn? I learned a lot from the Colegio Seminario mission statement. It says, living out our faith in and through community service invites students to concrete experiences of outreach and encounter the person of Jesus. I've never really thought about service this way, about encountering Jesus. I'd kind of always thought about service as something where I was called to go do it by Jesus, but it was kind of me just like reaching out as an extension of Jesus, as opposed to me actually going towards Jesus. And that might seem like a subtle little shift, but for me that was kind of huge. Instead of like holding on to Jesus and reaching out to help other people, it's actually like I'm coming towards Jesus through my acts of service, and that's a beautiful thing. And a lot of times, at least for me, it's always been like, where's God? Where is He? You know, like I don't see Him in my life, but He's in the actions. He's in the brokenness. He's in the orphans and the widows and the people that are feeling lonely. So, why does the Castores program work? First, these people are in groups. You saw the kind of pictures, the groups that I matched up with for the programs, but these students, they're in the same group for all 3 years. They do a different service for an entire year, but they are with the same people. So you grew up with these people, and you mature with these people, and I think that is incredibly valuable. Also, one type of service per year. So when you start a year doing one service, if you start the year at Covalingo, you are going to finish the year at Covalingo. So there is a really, really long, ongoing investment in these people. And if I got to know these people by name so quickly, imagine how connected you could feel to these people if you were seeing them every single week over and over and over again, building this relationship, building this community, making friends. And that, I think, is why it's partly so successful. Also, progression of types of service, so you can figure out where you fill in. I mentioned that. Also, faith. This was very, very interesting to me. I asked every single student there. First of all, I should say, service there is completely voluntary. They don't have required hours. There is nothing required about it at all. And this is a humongous commitment, Castores, every single Saturday. And so I would ask these students all the time, what is it that motivates you to serve? Why would you serve if it's not required? And every single one of them responded, I serve because of my faith. I serve because I want to follow in the footsteps of our Lord Jesus Christ and find that joy. For me, that was really cool. It's like, well, I mean, thinking about it, it's like, what other answer did I expect? But I mean, that is so clear cut. Like, yes, Jesus. Jesus is the answer. There's nothing else we can say. It's just Jesus. Also, Ut Serviam. It's the slogan of their entire school, and I think it's a very, very neat mindset where the entire purpose of their education in a society that's not exceptionally educated is so that then they can go back and they can share their gifts with others. They learn so that they can use it to serve others. They're not learning it so that they can better themselves and go up the kind of the food chain ladder of society. They are doing it so that they can go back down to the bottom and use that to help bring up other people. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful mission statement for their school. So what can we as a Bear Creek population do? First, live little parts of a normal life well in order to cultivate other virtues. So this goes back to the shrimp thing, right? I didn't have to save all of the shrimp on the beach. That would have been impossible and completely overwhelming. But you can. That doesn't mean that you just ignore all the little shrimp at your feet. You can pick up your little shovel and just do one at a time and just make a difference to that one person. And that's where all the changes are going to happen, when everyone is doing that. Next, don't be afraid of embarrassment. When I was serving the homeless people the food, I had one of the students there kind of laughing and telling me about how sometimes they offer food to someone on the street and they're not actually homeless, they're just walking. And they were, that's really embarrassing, huh? And I mean, that would be embarrassing, but I think that tells a lot about their selflessness and that they are willing to be embarrassed, because the alternative would be that someone could go hungry and they are not willing to sacrifice that. Also, go hardcore. This is an intense program. They're spending 5 hours on Saturday, each person, with the 3-hour serving and then the 2-hour reunion. And I think a lot of times we're afraid that students are going to be scared off. High school students don't want that kind of commitment. But what I found is that when something is that serious, it becomes a priority. So for me, the example was math class. When I took Pre-calculus, it's like, I know this is hard, I'm going into it, I have this expectation, and I'm going to work hard because I know that it's intense. And I think that that happens with a lot of us. When something is hard, we make it a priority, and I think that's something that community service could really be. Also, emphasizing student leaders. One of the coolest things about Castores, there's a lot of things, but one of the coolest things is that almost every single leader of the groups is an alumni of the program. So there are very, very few adults involved at all. And the students that come back to lead, that is a really highly sought after, super, super competitive position. These students, they have to apply, and they're always worried that they're not going to get in because everyone wants to come back and lead these groups, both in high school and the groups beforehand. And because they are so close to what just happened, they're really, really invested in the program, and they also realize, really closely what struggles these students right beneath them are going through because they experienced it just beforehand. Also, celebrate service joyfully. While I was on the airplane flying down there that Saturday, they were actually having a parade and a celebration to celebrate the kickoff of community service. And there was games and floats and face painting and costumes, and everyone got their matching sweatshirts. And they made community service joyful. And I think that's something we sometimes miss sometimes, is we're going to be serving sad people, so we need to be serious, and we need to empathize with them, and it's really somber. But these people are bringing the joy of the Lord to these sad people in order to make them joyful, and that's transformation, and I think that is what service should be all about. So, before I conclude, I would like to thank a couple people. I don't want to forget anyone, so I have a list. First, I want to thank Senora Janos. She was my project advisor, subject expert. She let me use her home for a couple of days, my contact, my Spanish interpreter when I didn't understand anything. So thank you very, very much for that. Also, she's the one who helped me fall in love with the Spanish language along with Senora Paramore. They both really are the ones who just ignited that passion that I had that made this trip possible. If I didn't speak Spanish, I would have kind of been in a bunch of trouble. Next, I want to thank Mr. Gephardt, Mrs. Blankenbeckler, and my pastor, Dr. Reverend Dean, for their interviews with me beforehand, getting this process going, giving me a starting point. I want to thank all the seniors. You guys are the people who basically filled out my survey, all the ones on the lockers that you guys did. I really appreciated that. It was super, super helpful for me. Also, I want to thank Silvana Harriet and Padre Manzon, who are my contacts essentially at Colegio Seminario. Silvana Harriet was like my first person who was like, yeah, you can do this. Actually, this might work. And she got me in contact with Senor Manzon, who was incredible. He was the one who set up all my interviews. He set up my itineraries for Castores. And he drove me around from site to site. He spoke to me just casually, always checking in, make sure things were good. He was incredible. Also, I want to thank my host families, the Fragnis and the Bertoncellos. They really invited me into their home, and I couldn't have done this project if I hadn't been with them, because they're the ones who gave me the inside view, all the little details that you need in order to really understand a culture, at least as much as you can in 3 weeks. So thank you to them. Also, I want to thank my parents who were either brave enough or crazy enough to let me go off on this adventure to a foreign country. I haven't really decided which one yet, but I really appreciate them letting me go and chase off some crazy dream that fits something that I'm really passionate about. I also want to thank the rest of my family, my siblings, and my grandparents who texted me just enough times to make me realize that I was missed, and just also remember how much support and love that I had and prayer coming in on the back end of my project, that God was really constantly working in this. So, without further ado, I would like to finish with this quote from my favorite book. If anyone wants to borrow it, I have it right here. But sometimes working in the third world country makes me feel like I am emptying the ocean with an eyedropper. And just when I have about half a cup full of water, it rains. More orphan children from the north migrate to where I live. More abandoned and dead babies are found. More people are infected with HIV. It is enough to discourage even the most passionate and enthusiastic person. Love is the reason I just keep filling up my little eyedropper. Keep filling it up and emptying my ocean one drop at a time. I'm not here to eliminate poverty, to eradicate disease, to put a stop to people abandoning babies. I'm just here to love. Thank you.
So you had your 5 steps.
Yes.
What are you going to do?
So I already talked to Mrs. Blankenbeckler. I'd love to connect. I have my first time I gave my mock presentation, it was close to 2 hours, so I have a lot more information that I'd love to share. As for me personally, there's this really new website called volunteermatch.org, so I've been searching there. I found this one program that is helping children with disabilities in a swimming pool, helping with physical therapy, so I downloaded their application, so we'll see if I can do something like that just for myself, but I'd also love to work with the school and help apply my 5 steps for success.
And learning another language changes. We know that phrase. Can you tell me one more change in you that your family see in you after this whole life?
Well, you could ask them, but as for me, I would say that learning a new language really forces you to be brave. For me, I'm more of an introverted person. I like to hear something, think about it, and kind of solve it on my own and internalize it. But when you're learning another language, you have to kind of put yourself out there. You have to put out your raw, unpolished sentences and just be at the grace of someone else. You have to really open yourself up. And when you're in another country especially, it's just compounded. There's so many people and so many things, and it's really easy to kind of draw into yourself. But if you want to get anything out of it, you really have to open yourself up and say, I'm not perfect, but I'm trying my best. And that's something that takes a lot of bravery. So I think that through learning another language, I've really had to grow up and own what I have to say and also be brave enough to make mistakes.
You think so much about serving individually. You did a lot of this in the context of a group. Just give us another benefit, something that you noticed or felt or sensed while you were serving with the group as opposed to doing it.
Okay. Well, I think part of that comes with the body of Christ. We all have different talents, and if you're trying to do it on your own, there's going to be a lot of gaps. Justina, she pulled it off brilliantly, but you know that magazine where she had to do all the different parts? That is really, really hard, and you can come up with a project, a finished product, but if you have people who are professional at every single aspect, it's just going to be a better project overall. So it's not that you can't accomplish the same things, but I think you can do more richness in a group, and that's something I noticed at every single project, that it was richer, it was a richer experience, more full experience by having a group there.
You did a lot of thinking and reading and talking to people before you left. Was there any preconceived notions or ideas that you kind of settled on that then were kind of rocked or changed by the experience?
Yeah, kind of. I went into this, I'd done a lot of historical research, and I had noticed that during the Great Depression, that's when the government had come in and kind of put in all their programs, and that's when youth service had kind of just plummeted. It just fell off and sunk really, really low as soon as the government got involved. So I kind of went into this with this assumption that teenagers are rebellious, and that's why they don't serve, is because people tell them to, and that's why they choose not to. And that was kind of rough for me, because I realized that it's not being rebellious, it's just the way that we're not connecting. It's that the students are missing the connection, and that's why they're not volunteering. It's not because they're rebelling against what they saw. So that was something that I wasn't expecting that I learned while I was down there.
One question from the audience.
So when you said you served mental illness places, would you say donations help more or personal interaction?
I would say personal interaction, hands down. That's the thing I noticed over and over and over again. Like the people who, the homeless people on the street who were giving the meal, they didn't even touch the meal until they had a time to interact with us and talk to us. And the same thing with these people. They were most joyful not when they were getting material items, but when they were holding our hands and leading us to color. So I think that that's what these people really crave, is that human contact, and they want to feel like they're not invisible. So I would say contact, for sure.
Thank you.